Do you wish you knew how to not let your children's tantrums touch on your triggers? My name's Jodie Thornton, and today I'm going to take you through my step-by-step process of figuring out what needs to change so that you will know how to hold space for your children's tantrums, no matter how big the feelings are, no matter how long they last, without you becoming triggered, without you reacting, and without you moving into that space where you're not really holding space for your children's feelings anymore. So our first thing to look at is whether you have the skills to help your child calm down from a tantrum, which is very different to just being there. And like you hear a lot of people talking about sharing your calm. It's definitely useful for our children to be around somebody who is calm when they are in distress. It is absolutely useful, but it's not necessarily helping them to understand and cool down their feelings, and it's not necessarily helping them in a way that doesn't invalidate their feelings. So when people say share their calm, it's like this idea that if a child is in distress and they notice that somebody who they trust, who they love, preferably, not necessarily, but at least somebody that they trust, is not in distress, that they will notice that there's nothing to be in distress about. And that's not necessarily true. I mean, our kids can be in distress about feeling like they don't matter. Well, if the adult that's there to hold space for them, if they're not noticing that this child is actually having a really big problem with feeling like they don't matter, then they're not going to notice that there is something to be in distress about. They're not going to necessarily help or support. They're going to be just saying, look, there's nothing that's, our nervous system's run off of whether we're under threat, right? So the adult is going to be like, look, there's nothing that we're under threat about. It's all safe. We're okay. But for all of us, not just for children, but for all of us, if our needs are not getting met, if we're afraid that our needs don't matter, or if we are afraid that we have no connection with other people, that is important to our nervous system. It's not just about threats to your actual life. It's also about whether your needs are getting met. And so when we do the share our calm thing, it is definitely more useful than invalidating their feelings. It is definitely more useful than shaming them for their feelings, which obviously we wouldn't do, but just in the scheme of things, definitely more useful than any kind of punishment or consequences, all of those kinds of things. It is 100% useful. What it doesn't do is help a child actually calm down and understand where the feelings have come from. Right? And so that's the first part, is that if you don't know how to do that, what happens for your nervous system is you see your beautiful child is in absolute distress and you don't know what to do. And so your nervous system goes on high alert to say, I'm supposed to be responsible for this child. I care very much about them. I am biologically wired to want to help them when they are in distress, and I don't know what to do. So your nervous system then goes, well, if I don't know what to do, what else is this like? Right? And then it goes reaching for similar experiences. And so when it goes reaching, it looks for other problems that are unsolved, right? And those basically make up your triggers. And so then when you have the skills to help your child with their big feelings, when they have big feelings, you jump into action. You know what to do. You know how to use your word choice. You know how to use your tone of voice. You know how to use your body language to help them to calm down and then actually work through what is causing these feelings and how do we resolve it. If you don't have that, then you're going to end up in distress yourself. You're going to be looking for, like, how do I solve this? And when your nervous system is on high alert, it's more likely to reach for those times where you also didn't know what to do. And you were also either feeling any number of things: powerless, helpless, incompetent. They're looking for all of these other times where something happened that was very, very meaningful for you and it didn't go well. And so that's why we end up having those triggers if we don't know how to use the skills. So that's our first thing. Now, if this is something that you need help with, you can register for my tantrums webinar. It's Supporting Children Through Tantrums. The link for that is in the show notes of this blog, and so you can go there, and that webinar, it's just under an hour. You can register for that webinar and you'll get those step-by-step, how do you help a child to calm down without invalidating their feelings, so that you can work out what the underlying cause is and then make a solution to the underlying cause for the feelings. Now, if you already know how to do that, so you know how to help them to calm down, you know how to figure out, so when it's not just, that was upsetting to you, but it was like, you were feeling frustrated because you needed to feel competent, and being able to put your shoes on is something that you want to be able to do for yourself, and it wasn't working, right? So, and then actually doing something about that, rather than just saying, and that happens to everybody and we can all just learn to not care. We're actually moving into, how do we solve that problem? If that's already your default, the next step is for us to unpack the triggers that are coming up. So different things can trigger different people about the tantrums themselves. Sometimes it can be the idea that the feelings are just so intense. So for a lot of us, once we really know how to hold space, so it's not about like reducing the intensity of the feelings, but actually understanding the intensity of the feelings and allowing our children to experience whatever intensity is actually true for them. For some of us, that feels really scary, because we may have experiences with big feelings. When big feelings are out of control, we felt unsafe as children. We may have experiences where our own big feelings, so for a lot of us, we have never really allowed ourselves to feel particularly negative feelings, but maybe positive as well, to their full intensity. We may have always had some kind of throttle to be able to hold back the full intensity of our feelings. And because we haven't had that experience of being held and safe while we have huge, intense feelings, we are afraid of what will happen to our children if they are allowed to have that full, intense feeling. Right? And so that's a two-pronged thing, right? It's a process of getting experience, allowing the feelings to be what they are. Then the second thing is unpacking, what are we afraid of? What are we afraid will happen? And even to some extent, what do feelings mean? Because for some of us, it's like feelings are like the weather. It's like something that can, first and foremost, it's like something that's completely outside of our control. It's not really connected to us. And you see a lot of people say, it's like the feeling comes up and then the feeling passes. That's not really what feelings are. Like, feelings are to tell us what is happening with our needs. So the feelings that we call positive are the ones that come when our needs are getting met. The feelings that we call negative are the ones that come when our needs are not getting met. So they're telling us. It's less like the weather, and it's more like the dashboard of a car, like letting you know what's going on with your fuel and your oil and all the things, right? That's what our feelings are for. And so if we understand that it's just telling us about our children's needs, then there's no need to be worried about how intense it is, because that's just telling us what's going on for our kid. Like, this is something that we can help them with. This is something we can support them through. It's no longer something to be afraid of. Now, there are a few different other reasons why big feelings can be really triggering. And so there's lots of different ones. So we need to unpack what is going on for you once you already know you've got the skills to help your child to calm down. If you're still finding tantrums triggering, then we need to work on the actual triggers. And so we can do that in a couple of ways. So one of the ways is to actually disconnect what's going on from what's happening. So an example that we've just talked about is like understanding that I've never felt the full extent of my feelings, so therefore I'm afraid of what will happen to my child. Now, a lot of people will say, so therefore you have to feel the full extent of your feelings. Not necessarily, right? The other option is that if you can know deeply that the fact that you haven't felt the full extent of your feelings doesn't necessarily mean that your child will be in danger if they feel the full extent of theirs. If you can know that, you can allow that to happen. You really can, right? And so we can say my experience of being afraid of the full extent of my feelings is different to my child's experience. And I know my child has me as a parent very, very different to where I'm at in my life, perhaps right now, perhaps when I was a child. And I know that I have the skills and the support to be able to hold space for my child through that experience, and I know it's going to be okay. That is what I call disconnect, because the trigger is still there. We haven't resolved the trigger. What we've done is we've made it clear to your nervous system that the experience your child is having right now doesn't relate to this trigger. It's just not connected in any way. So we can just disconnect it. The next way is what I call defuse, which we're just basically removing the fuse. So what that would look like from a tantrums perspective is we would focus on your ability to be more attuned to your child and more solution focused with your child to prevent the tantrums from happening in the first place. Right? If we know that tantrums are a trigger for you, we know that you've got the skills to calm them down, but still they trigger you, then what we can do is we can just avoid tantrums. And I know people will be saying, but you can't always avoid all tantrums. You can avoid a lot of them without compromising your parenting values. There are ways to do that. Take some creative thinking. Sometimes it takes having someone that's like not so close to the situation to be able to help you to see some of the ways you can avoid it. Maybe we can't avoid all of them, but if we can avoid most of them, then we avoid all those experiences of your triggers coming up. And so that's our second option. Now, our third option is actually to unpack the trigger, right? And so if you've got a trigger around, let's say your trigger is around if people get too sad, they may never recover. Like if they're really allowed to be the full amount of sadness that they are, they may get stuck in a pattern of just being sad for the rest of their lives, and they'll be stuck with that, and it will become a pattern, and they will never be able to see the fun side of life. They'll never be able to be successful. What we do is we go and look for, where does that come from? Where has that belief been created? And we unpack how that wasn't actually the situation that happened, right? And I'm not saying the wording that was terrible, not saying that you haven't experienced like seeing that play out, but what is true is that there's no risk of someone just having sadness and then they're stuck in sadness forever that is unpreventable. What's the situation might have happened is that the person that you watched that happen to did not have appropriate support around them. They more than likely were growing up in a really unhealthy culture, because we have one. There's all these things that are going on, but the supports and the skills and the emotional awareness and resilience is possible for your child to learn. And so just because you saw that happen for somebody, it's like your mind has made meaning that if one person got so sad that they could never recover again, that's a risk for all people, that we could all cross into a certain level of sadness that we would never recover from. And that part is the part that's not true. That part is the part where sadness is telling us about our needs, and if we have somebody to help us to understand our feelings and then to make decisions that will help us get our needs met, and in those times where we can't get our needs met, for someone to tell us that doesn't invalidate the need, that the need is still valid, the need is still important, the need matters, that's the part that protects us from getting stuck in sadness for the rest of our lives, right? So you can see this is just one example, but just going through those pieces. Now, how do you choose between these three options? So we've got disconnecting, defusing, or healing. We choose the one that makes the most sense for you at the moment. So depending on the situation, one may be more effort than another. I've had experiences myself and with clients where healing something that felt so big and so horrible can be done in less than half an hour. And this is not therapy. I'm not talking about therapy here. I'm just talking about unpacking a belief that was formed a long time ago. It can sometimes be done in half an hour. Other times, it's going to take a lot more processing and unpacking, and the disconnection can be simpler or easier. And so we're just looking for what is, based on the circumstances that you've got right now, what is the most appropriate method for us to use, and we just choose that one. And so if this is something that you would like some help with, this is what I help my clients with. So first we'll check in on, how are your skills at being able to help your child actually calm down from a tantrum? So not just be there and be calm. And for most of us, it's very difficult to just be calm. Probably we're not being calm. Probably we're pretending to be calm and push the feelings down, right? And I say that because if a child, even if it's not your child, if a child is in front of you in distress, it's very, very difficult for you not to have like a hardwired response to want to help that person. The only way to not do that is really to push the feelings down, right? So if you've got those, our first thing is just to work through those skills. And once you've got those skills, generally speaking, we find perhaps the trigger goes away. Like once you feel competent, you may not be triggered at all. But if you are still being triggered, then we look at what's causing those triggers and then what's the easiest way forward for us to decide, are we going to disconnect it? Are we going to defuse it? And are we going to heal it? And we just work through whichever one is the most appropriate in the circumstances that you've got. Sometimes some will be more effort than others, and sometimes some will be more appealing. Like I hear from a lot of people, it's like, I'm actually not willing to look at where that came from right now. I'm not up for that. And then we just choose another option. Like we don't ever have to heal anything in order to have a healthy relationship with our kids. We can handle it at a behavioural level in a different way. So if that's something that you would like some help with, you can book a call with me where we can talk about where are you up to, what would you like to do, and I can talk you through which of my services would be most appropriate for you. So you can book that call at jodithornton.com/call, CALL, and at that link you can just book in a time and we can just chat through what is it that you need and which services of mine might be appropriate for you. Thank you so much for watching, and if after you've watched this, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to email me, jody@jodithornton.com. Just let me know what are you concerned about or where are you stuck, and we'll make sure that we can help you move forward to becoming the parent that you want to be and feeling really confident in how you're showing up for your kids, that it's in alignment with your values and that you're really attuned to what your child needs from you. See you soon.